What's going on, everyone? So I finally had time to playtest with Trial Deck 3, so I figured I'd give you a review of that since I already did Trial Deck 2, and I guess now that I'm doing both of these, I'm going to have to do Trial Deck 1 as well. But before we jump into this, I enjoyed playing with this deck. However, I think Mystical Hunters did suit my playstyle better. But I did like dropping all the massive creatures in this deck, and I loved having so many fort bursts, because even when you were taking damage, with all the fort bursts, you were usually getting something out of it, so it wasn't like a total loss on your part. Not like Mystical Hunters, where you only have the one fort burst, so you don't really want to take the damage. But I think that deck had so many ambushes to prevent that from happening, while this deck encourages your opponent to attack, and then just attacks back even harder. So, really the only flaw I saw in this deck was, aside from all the giant cards, I don't think that was even that much of a problem. I felt like I always had the resources to play cards, and enough of what I needed. But the one thing that I noticed was that I kept running out of my hand. So, early on in one of the Let's Talk videos, I had said that I didn't think drawing cards was going to be that important. I was wrong. Drawing cards is important, especially in a deck like this, where I think draw power is necessary. So with that being said, let's jump into this review. So, the first red card, the big boss monster that everyone recognizes, is Zarko. This card is amazing. However, I did notice that it's not a game winner like I thought it was going to be. I don't think I've played this card as many times. I think I've dropped it like once or twice, but my girlfriend's playing the same deck, and she's managed to bring it out a few times, but I've still always managed to come back and win, even though this card was on the field. So, I don't think it's as broken as everyone thought it was going to be. I mean, it's still one of the best cards that has been released, including the cards that were revealed for Rally to War, and it's definitely worth picking up if you're looking to play a red deck. So then we got Stormfeather Screecher, which this card was just kind of lackluster. Yeah, it's a great monster, stat-wise, able to attack over any creature or Drago Shield. However, the Double Breaker effect was not as good as what I thought it was going to be. There was never a chance where I was able to get this effect off, and my girlfriend was never get the effect off on me. And I don't think it's one of those things that you're ever going to get off unless you already have this on the field and then play an All Guns Blazing or something like that to give you a free attack. I think that's when this card thrives, but being such a high cost, you're not going to really see it until late game. So, yeah, I think this card can come out if you wanted to put in 2 more Zargos, just so that you see it more. But then we got Carefree Orc. This card is amazing, especially early game, with so many creatures with X1 stats. This card is just able to blow them up and leave your opponent with less resources when their next turn comes. So I really like this card. However, with this deck, I felt like 2 was enough. I mean, maybe 3, just so that you're almost guaranteed to see it. But I think 4 would just be a little bit cloggy, just because it still isn't that powerful of a monster. And as the game progresses and it gets later in, I feel like this card's going to be less useful. I think it's just an early game card, but still really good and definitely worth picking up. Then we got Highland Rogue. I really underestimated this card. That extra +2/+2 that she gets when she attacks a fort is huge early game, because your opponent's only going to have smaller creatures, and they're not going to be ready to handle a 3/3 coming at them for only 1 cost. So, yeah, I really did not expect this card to do as well as it did, and I am glad to see that I was wrong. I'm glad to see that a lot of these cards are actually better than what I thought they were going to be. But, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's something that you don't also look forward when you're playing against this card. Because I noticed I was even forgetting about this effect when my girlfriend would go to attack me. I would go to block it, forgetting that it was a 3/3, and then I'd lose my creature. So, if you are playing against this deck, just remember that she is a 3/3 when she's attacking a fort that has already been attacked. But yeah, you get 4 of her, which is really awesome. Definitely really great early game. And then there's Hidden Blade. She was really good in the demo deck. She doesn't shine as bright here. However, it still punishes your opponent when they attack into her as a barrier. Just being able to drop a 4/1, but with only that 1 endurance, if you're in the mirror match, then Carefree Orc's just going to be able to pop her. And then we got Wandering Orc. So this card was a really beefy creature in the demo deck. However, I don't think it's as good here. I mean, the 5 attack is great, but I think there are just better cards that I want to play my resources with. I mean, it does have the stats as Primate Javelineer, which, as I said in the Mystical Hunters review, that card put in a lot of work, but with a different playstyle of this deck, I feel like these stats aren't as necessary, but still a great card. Then on the other hand, Bone Club Giant, while it was just a heavy hitter in the demo deck, I feel like this card is great in this deck for only 3 cost. It allows you to play more cards in your turn rather than paying the extra resource for Wandering Orc. And being a 4/3, it is able to break a lot of shields and also threaten your opponent. With that giant attack, you can use it as a blocker early game, but towards the mid game, late game, it's not going to be able to block as much stuff and survive. But yeah, this is definitely a great card in the deck. And then we got Torch. Great in the demo deck. I'm sure it's great here. I've actually never drawn into this while playing this deck. But yeah, I mean, for 3 resources, being able to blow up a card based on your red die is pretty good. So that's it for the red cards. This is pretty red heavy. And the only thing I wish that was in here was like a Harpy Huntress. Just because I felt like that's such a good card in the demo deck. But moving on to the green cards that we got. First up, we have Fleetwing Sprite, which lets you play 1 card from your hand as a resource. So turn 1, you could potentially put out her and 2 of the Highland Rogue, which is already breaking a fort. Because there's 1 to get over the Drago Shield if your opponent rolls a low number, plus 2 to attack the barriers. And if it's your first turn, when it comes to your turn again, you're going to be able to put out another creature that can block. And yeah, she really sets up for bigger plays really early on. And she is really good. And I think this is better than cards like Growth or one of the other spells that lets you get a resource, because it also puts a monster on the field, which lets you block. I mean, after you summon her, you don't really need her anymore, so you can freely block because she's not as necessary. But definitely a great card and really worth running for. Then we got Elven Farstriker. So, I had said that this ability wasn't that great, but I was wrong. With so many red cards in here, she easily becomes a 6/7, getting the +1/+1 from like having 4 other red creatures and then maybe another green one. And after that, she's able to break any Drago Shield, she's able to block any attack, and really puts a lot of pressure on the opponent. If you're going to attack, I've been using her as a defender, and if you're going to attack the fort that she's at, you're going to lose that creature. So definitely an underrated card. Don't know if it's worth running more than 2, and she might even not be as useful once Rally to War actually comes out. but for these trial deck battles, she is definitely great. Then we got Primate Javelineer. As I said, this card was really great in the Mystical Hunters deck, however, not so much in here, just because I feel like there are better creatures. But this is still a great card and able to break most Drago shields. Then we got Thornbark Walker. This card would be a lot better if it was a 5/5/5, just because I felt like when my opponent goes to attack me, and with this card, I typically have something that can kill a 4/4, and you're usually losing this card. So with that extra 1/1, I mean, if it's Drago Crossed, that'd be great. Then it might be able to survive, might be able to take something with it. But playing it from your hand isn't that great, but this card really shines when it gets attacked as a Fort Burst. So not sure if it's worth running 4, maybe 2. I was really against this card when I first saw it, but now that I've actually played with it, I do think it is worth running at least 2 copies, just to get a massive body on board. Then we have Leilania's Call, and this card is amazing. It's only a common, so there's going to be plenty of copies floating around after Rally to War comes out, and first turn, you can throw out your Elven Farstriker or Bone Club Giant, and just get a really big body on the field. And if it gets hit as a Fort Burst, you can summon Zargo on your opponent's turn, blow up cards, get an extra defender, and this card is just amazing. However, I'm not sure if I would recommend running 4 copies, just because I felt like even with 2 copies, it was kind of clogging in my hand, where I would have this and other creatures, but most of my creatures were 2 cost. So it was never really worth playing this card. So might be a 3 of, maybe if you're running more larger cost cards, it'd be worth playing 4, but definitely a really great card. And then we got Nature's Touch. So I feel like the biggest uses for this is if your Zargo happens to die, you can bring it back, or if your Fleetwing Sprite dies, you can bring it back and then get another resource. But aside from that, I mean, this is mostly great for on-summon effects, or just to block. Aside from that, it's just kind of a meh card. I mean, it's definitely not bad, but I think there are better cards that can be played. So now moving on to the blue ones, we have Dramp Tomar, who switches values upon entering the field, so there's another one you can use with Nature's Touch. But I feel like this card isn't as great as I thought it was going to be. paying 4 resources for this is kind of heavy. It doesn't really block much. I mean, 4 is kind of easy to get over, especially mid-game when this card is usually coming out. And with 3 attack, it's usually not going to take anything with it once it hits the field. But still a really cool looking card. If you were going to play this, I would recommend only 2. Not really sure you should play more than that. Then we got Yeoman Raider. Just a really nice 2/3/2. You guys know that I'm a fan of low-cost cards with more attack than what they cost. So I did definitely like this card. Not really much else to say about that. Then we got Rejuvenate. This card is amazing. Being able to draw cards, I was usually drawing 2 cards with this. Yeah, I think I always drew 2, because I would never use it if I just had 1. But then if you have a green 1/3, you get an extra resource. So if you have a green 1/3, you're essentially paying this for 1 cost. So I think that's huge. It really lets you get a lot of advantage. And this is one of those draw cards that replenishes your hand after you play it all down with cards such as Fleetwing Sprite. So really wish they would have given you 4 in this deck, but I guess that's why it's worth picking 2 of these up. Or you can just wait until Rally to War comes out and pick up your other 2 copies then. And then finally we got All Guns Blazing. So when this card first came out, I said it was really great, and then as time went on, it became just kind of meh, but this card is definitely awesome as a Fort Burst. And one thing, if you haven't read this card, be sure to read the Fort Burst effect, because you get to draw a card when you activate it as a Fort Burst. So, my girlfriend has often forgotten about that, and I think I saw someone else forget about that as well. So yeah, be sure to remember to draw, because that is huge in this deck. And then, I think only once I've activated it from my hand for paying the 6, just to push in for damage. So definitely a great card. If you have this base, I would go 4, but if not, I think 2 might be fine. I mean, it's just another big card that you can use with Fleetwing Sprite to put down for a resource. But yeah, this deck is definitely great. It does have the power there, and I just prefer Mystical Hunters. But yeah, let me know down below which deck you guys favored, or which deck you're looking to pick up if you haven't bought them already. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter. Link is down below in the description. And as always, thanks for watching.